This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, good Friday morning and welcome to the program. I'm Brian Callahan again. The good news is this is not budget day. Again, thank the Lord, with all due respect to government and the Minister of Finance, who is a friend, or at least was. We'll see after the show or after this week. You know, for someone who didn't follow the journalism path for the math of it, I don't relish budget day, I got to be honest. But this week we had the false start, the no-go on Wednesday and Thursday, just to add insult to injury. We're just left to, the problem with budgets, we're just left to digest so much in so little time. It's kind of like the epitome of that fire hose metaphor, just coming at you so hard, And the numbers are bad enough, but weeding through them to decipher what's new and what's not, because they don't come out and tell you, like the roads funding, for example, $250 million for this season. That was announced some time ago. I mean, I was at an event with John Abbott and the Heavy Civil Association more than a month ago, and then again earlier this week, and again there it is today and yesterday in the budget. So there's a lot of reading between the lines and behind the lines that goes on, and that's required to provide, like, say, the fairest review of the budget. But that takes time, and there are others who do just that kind of thing for a living, hoping to hear from some of you today. It's the numbers you don't see that frustrates me. Call me cynical, but the budget is not unlike the throne speech. More bluster and self-backslapping, if you will, I mean, some of the numbers you just can't avoid. Deficit, debt, we're up over, 10? The number 10 is a big number. 10 is a big number, and when you're talking both in terms of the debt and spending, one just outpacing the other, leaving us with a deficit now of estimated to be $160 million, but projected as well could be up to $450 million. And the interest on that debt, and from there on, it's about how our government is going to try to dig our way out, all the while carrying on as if we're normal. And a lot of us are not very normal right now, especially in the bank account department. The gamble, I suppose, is whether windmills, green hydrogen, critical minerals, and yes, still oil, very much oil. That's not going anywhere anytime soon. And whether or not all of those resources can dig us out before it's too late, a la Dwight Ball a few years ago, or a couple of years ago, when he wrote to the Prime Minister and said we were pretty much bankrupt. Anyway, it's not budget day, but it is the day after budget day, when we hopefully can step back and assess a little. I will say this, the protesters, the fish harvesters that inserted themselves in this week, they did the job, which in my humble opinion was to steal the headlines. I mean, the supper hour news last night, the radio news yesterday afternoon, the budget was the second story on most, until for the moment that it broke and that the news was coming out live, it was the top of the news. But after that, the dispute with government by the fish harvesters, the protests up at Confederation Building on Wednesday and Thursday, and we're told they were back this morning. And also we were told that John Efford had a meeting planned with the Minister of Fisheries. He posted that on social media last evening, saying he had a big meeting and saying that today would be the biggest day and the biggest fight of all. So we'll see where that goes. We're going to try to get John on the line and get a little update on how his meeting went and what exactly the plan is today. On top of everything else, negotiations toward trying to reach some kind of mutual formula for snow crab this season, that broke down yesterday. Those talks are off. They're stalled. And this has already shades of last year, but God help us if it comes to that again. And one would think that given the last 6 to 7 months, they didn't just wait until now to really get serious about the talks. I mean, the whole idea from last year was, at least we now have, the off season, so to speak, to be able to figure out something calmly and collectively without setting deadlines and ultimatums and, God forbid, getting in fights with horses at Confederation Building. But that's another story. I just think that, not only did they accomplish getting everyone's attention, they really stole the thunder of what's on what's arguably government's biggest day of the year. There's no part of government that's not involved with the budget. So it's a lot of work goes into it behind the scenes that we don't see, of course. A lot of number crunching, careful number crunching, of course. And then there's the actual wording, which is careful as well. And the biggest day of the year, and the harvesters stole the thunder. So they accomplished that. They got attention. Whether or not they can keep everyone's attention wrapped enough to keep government's attention, because that's the idea here anyway. Fonz, how are we doing on the lines there, buddy? Good? Thumbs up is always good. Are we taking a break and then we'll come back with a caller, or what do you want to do? Take line one, Keith? All right, let's go to line one. Keith on line one. Enough of me. I got a call yesterday saying, great show, just stop talking so much. So, Keith, help me stop talking so much. How are you this morning?
I'm not bad. Yourself?
Good, sir.
Yeah, so I just wanted to drop by and just some COVID education and information. So I'll just start by saying, what would you say if I told you 1.2 million adults will be too chronically ill to work in any job by 2026? Would you find that alarming?
I'd find anything, said like that alarming. I mean, my first go-to would be, okay, I'm going to check out all of those numbers and the causes and reasons for them, because there's never any one reason for a number like that. Very broad and spectrum. I'd want more detail, and I'm sure you're going to go there.
Yes, I surely am. So that's one of the estimates for long COVID here in Canada. So in December, Statistics Canada put out a large report on long COVID, and they found that 3.5 million people had or currently have long COVID, and that was only up until August. So what they also found was that with each infection, the chances of long COVID increases. So when you're at 3 infections, you're at about 38% chance of developing long COVID, and then it increases in increments of about 15% as you get infected again and again. So this is a lot of scientists are calling it a mass disabling event. A lot are calling it the actual pandemic because we've taken our focus away from, what can happen after infection, and we've seemed to claimed victory because acute deaths, like the immediate ones, the obvious ones, have gone down. So what we're also seeing is a rise in excess deaths, right? So places that had, say if a place had, like Newfoundland, an annual death rate, this is just a made-up number to show what I'm saying, 500 or something, right? And then all of a sudden now that death rate is about 600. People aren't attributing the excess deaths to COVID because it's not directly linked for a number of different reasons, right? So we've prematurely declared victory against this virus when it's actually spreading at a super high rate within our population, right? So,
yeah, the thing about long COVID always confounds me, only in the sense that it's a medical thing. So when it comes to medical, we're all different. Everybody's metabolism is different. Everybody reacts differently to different infections and viruses. Some have great immune systems. Some have crappy immune systems. Some take weeks to recover. Some takes... I've had some symptoms that I might consider long COVID that have sort of lingered. But, to be honest with you, I'm not getting any younger. So I'm also susceptible to other things that, my immune system isn't as good as it used to be. But, the numbers that you give out, I'm just wondering I'm more concerned about how they're arrived at, and the studies that are done, and the people that are involved in the demographics, because I just don't think, when you get those kind of numbers, the 1.3s and that sort of thing, you got to drill down really into, first of all, what kind of symptoms are they? Is this like a prolonged cough? Is it like really severe lung or pulmonary, restriction? Is it... Do you know what I mean? Are they headaches? So what are you seeing in that sense? What are the most common? What identifies? When does somebody say, I have something that, could be classified as something different than everything else, but only long COVID?
Long COVID can manifest in over 200 symptoms. However, the definition is when those symptoms last 3 months or longer, right? So a lot of people will say, we've always gotten lasting symptoms from viruses. Yes, but not for 3 to 6 to 12 months, right? You don't hear people say, I have long flu. I caught the flu back in 2020 and I'm still sick from it. That's not something, that people have ever spoken about. However, the most common symptoms are like extreme fatigue, right? So when they say 1.2 million adults will be removed from the workforce, that's because they're basing it on all the adults that are already removed from the workforce. So they can't even function enough. Some lose motor skills, brain damage. So these are type of things that can happen. Heart issues, cardiac events. These things can happen to people from any level of infection. So people think, hey, I caught COVID. I was fine. It was just like the cold. That's irrelevant in the situation, because people who are asymptomatic, which is over 50% of people who are infected with COVID. So right now in Newfoundland, we have 7,300 to 13,000 estimated people infected, 1 out of every 44. So not every one of them is walking around with, severe symptoms that's just knocking them on their butt. A lot of them have it and they don't even know it. And out of that group who have it and don't even know it, they could be sustaining hidden damage to their heart, to their brain, to their blood vessels, to whatever, because that's what COVID does. Now, the whole reason I called in today is because of this lack of information. So we have 2 departments in Newfoundland that I'm very concerned with at the moment. One of them is obviously, the health minister and their department, and we've already gotten masks back in healthcare areas, which is great. It's a great first step. However, due to these numbers, which came from Stats Canada, which is highly detailed, they did a study where they called people and they interviewed them and they dug deep to find out, hey, these people aren't okay, right? So when Statistics Canada came out with that huge report in December, that should have triggered alarm bells for a lot of people. One of them being obviously our health department, public health, and then the second one should have been, places where people congregate in the most highest numbers, which is schools, right? So right now, schools are pretty much wide open to not only COVID, but everything else. And what we have is the emergence of measles on the horizon. And right now we have zero adjustment in schools and lack of communication between public health and schools, which I found out through ATIPS, which I submitted months ago. And so the concern I have right now is that people just think, okay, their kids are fine, they're fine, as long as it's just mild symptoms. Even in the face of all the real world evidence that we have, we see people are sick way more often than they used to be. We see the hospitals way more packed than they used to be. And this is attributed to the byproducts of COVID-19. So we have people becoming infected. Their immune systems get dampened by the COVID-19 infection, and that leaves them wide open to everything else. This is why we see people saying, hey, we're sick again. Oh, my God, I can't believe it. We're sick again. And you see it all over social media, and you see it in every parking lot of every hospital in the country. So the problem is that studies have been done in the U.S., and they're saying they're about estimated 5.8 million kids have long COVID in the U.S. already. We didn't do our study on Canadian kids yet. So what my concern is that there's a severe lack of information being sent from public health to the education department, and no adjustments are being made. So since 2022, we've had no communication virtually between the school district and public health, not even to check up and say, hey, have things changed with COVID? Has anything else emerged that we should take note of? Should we go back to masking? Should we be stressing clean air? Nothing. There's been no guidance given down to the school system, and parents and teachers and students are all in the dark about that. So they're not going to be for very long. So that's basically why I called today. So I'm working with a group who is going to illuminate this situation through various means, through media, through social media posts. We're going to be emailing groups of teachers. I've already emailed most of the education, the school district, the health minister, all those good folks. And we're going to be, sharing information with them that should really trigger some form of, hey, we need to slow down the level of community illness that we're seeing right now. So,
Keith, I'd say as long as you carefully vet whatever information is you're going to distribute. And just tell me again, what is the group? What is the name? Or do you have a title for your group that you're going to be forming that will be sort of spearheading this information sharing?
Yes. So obviously the information will be vetted. It's through Statistics Canada
Right.
is one
I'm
of our
saying it's
biggest-
not just for your benefit, but for the benefit of the public to hear that. That's a question that if I don't ask,
Yes.
I mean, let's face it, the problem with COVID, one of the biggest problems of COVID has been communication, information, the spreading of true information and the spreading of false information. And once you go down the road, and I don't need to tell you, we all know what we all went through, the skepticism, the vaccines, the state run, all of that kind of stuff. All I'm saying is, and I'm not advising you as a communications expert, all I'm just saying is, as a journalist, the first thing I'm going to want to know when I get an email from you on this subject, I'm going to want to see a clear correlation to, official statistics that, some people might not call government official statistics. We all know that too. But at least, as you said, Statistics Canada information that's relevant to our jurisdiction as well as has the proper context. That's all I'm saying. Because if it's going to be mass information like that, it's good for the media to know. Because we get a lot of that sort of stuff, and sometimes we quickly debunk it because we don't know where it's coming from.
Well, I can debunk anything you say if I feel it now, and that's not how this is going to work. So I'm dealing in reality, which is based on scientific studies, right? So I know someone can just call in next and say to you, I disagree with gravity, but that's not going to make us all float off into space, right? So yes, no, totally. All of the information that I'm sharing is backed up by peer-reviewed studies, not just ones that have come out. These are peer-reviewed.
Fair enough, and it wasn't any kind of criticism or cynicism. I just know this subject so intensely. Yeah. The media do, and we've been the butt of it too, right? So.
Which is great because you're answering the question for them before they use that as
that's the point. And what did you say the name of the group is again? Like what'll be your title?
Right now we are just COVID Awareness 2024. We started a billboard campaign before Christmas. We're all over national news. Loads of newspapers, different newscasts all over the country, and we're probably going to be shifting to Long COVID Canada or Canadian Long COVID.
That's still kind of a work in progress, the title.
Yes, so we will be a incorporated nonprofit here in the coming weeks. So.
And where are you based?
Stephenville, Newfoundland, and all over the country. We have people who work to share information, lots of doctors, virologists. But
your headquarters are Stephenville?
Yep.
Okay. And who else? Is there like a board? Is there, not to get too deep, I'm just curious, so we have even that information on hand for contact information. Is there a board, or is it just, how do you, who else is part of the group right now, I guess?
There's a couple of people who actually work anonymously because of fear of retribution because of the
Well, now you know what I was getting at.
Exactly.
Right?
But our board will be on our website once we get that up and running, and I'll send that off to you guys as soon as we get it up.
And more for contact information. Once official information comes out, once you disseminate that, I'm sure you'll have the proper contact info, and people are going to want to know where this is all coming from. That's all my point was.
Oh, definitely. No, yeah. Like I say, I'm just calling in today because, a lot of parents are in the dark. They're seeing their kids become sick over and over. We're seeing a lot of parents who are confused over where their kids have new conditions coming from, and it's not being shared between public health, the school system, and the parents. And you
know why that is, right? I mean, the appetite is just what everybody's got. And I know you can't just ignore something like this, but the appetite to even discuss this, let alone consider getting it on people's minds again, that, this is all the fallout. It's just I know what you're saying. Like the information is helpful, and the accurate information is always helpful. I just know a lot of people are going to kind of, they're going to not be so warm up to it.
Well, and that's the thing, and it's too bad that it's come to this, because if there was transparent information sharing from the start, then the shock of, oh, wow, we've been playing soccer in Chernobyl isn't going to be as blunt, right? And I know people's appetite for it has gone away. I hate broccoli, but I still eat it because it's good for me. I absolutely hate it.
All that said, of course, I would welcome the minister and, of course, the Tony, not Tony Sack. Oh, my goodness, my brain right now, it's been a long week. But certainly, anyone from the Eastern School District, anyone from the Teachers Association, of course, the minister or anyone, to respond, Minister of Health, Minister of Education, just to respond on to your comments, regarding either lack of communication or lack of action to, either acknowledge or act on the effects of long COVID. Keith, thanks so much. Appreciate the phone call. Look forward to your information when you send it along.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. And with that, off to a quick break, Fonts, and back with Jay Goldberg with the Taxpayer Federation right after this.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Just before we get to our next caller, just informed by our newsroom and the lovely and talented Linda Swain that we have confirmation that the FFAW leadership are meeting with the Minister of Fisheries, Elvis Lovelace, as we speak. Probably explains, Fonts, why we probably haven't been able to get a hold of Mr. Effort. Can't believe he didn't take our call. I mean, well, really, I'm sure he could.
You know who I think I am?
Yeah, you know who you are. So anyway, understandably tied up, and I think he knows, certainly he knows, the media will be quite interested to see what the outcome is of those talks. Now that budget day is away, there's not as much urgency, but there's always urgency. Whom we can. And one other thing, going back to that so we'll give you that information as soon as we get any information on how those talks went. Because just a reminder, yesterday we're told that talks, negotiations toward trying to find a mutual formula for the snow crab season this year also fell apart yesterday. So it's not the most positive, rosy picture going into the weekend, but we'll see. Just going back to my last caller, too, Keith, on the long COVID. I wondered if I dreamt this, but either I was off or I can't remember. But I do remember just back, something had jarred my memory about something that the NL Health Services had done recently regarding, and it was just the return of masking, of course. Now, I don't know, maybe someone is listening who can tell me if it's still in place, but I know that back on February 1st, may have forgotten this, that masking was required again. They said temporarily at the time, required in all clinical areas of hospitals, healthcare facilities, including congregate living, long-term care, and that was effective February the 5th. And I didn't see and I don't see an update to that, so I'm wondering if that's still in place. And a reminder to people, I'm sure it's not top of mind when you go to the hospital. It wouldn't have been for me, only in the business I remember seeing it come across in a news release. But in any event, if that's still in place, it's a good reminder, and if not, somebody will call me out on it. Let's, as promised, move on to Jay Goldberg with the Taxpayer Federation. You are on the air.
Good morning.
Morning, Jay. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. I just wanted to call in to chat about yesterday's budget.
Oh, yay. I mean, excellent. Sorry, I don't know if you heard me off the top. I'm never a big numbers guy, and budget day isn't necessarily my cup of tea. It comes with the territory, but yeah, it's just being sarcastic. Of course, it's important to every single one of us, so fire away.
Well, I would say there's a few key things that we saw yesterday. Obviously, the gas tax cut was extended, which is really important for families. That's saving families hundreds of dollars a year at the gas pump. I think another move that the government made that was important was to lower the small business tax rate. It was 3%. They're lowering it to 2.5%, which is now equivalent with Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. I think that's a good thing. But you talked about the deficit. It's about $150 million. The government did push back their balanced budget plans. It was supposed to be balanced this year. Now they're saying next year. My biggest concern actually coming out of the budget, which, I think was kind of something that didn't get a lot of attention, is that although this year's deficit is small, last year's deficit ballooned. It's about $300 million more than the government projected that it would be.
Right.
So I'm concerned that government projections, what they're saying, at the beginning of the fiscal year, I'm concerned that it's not necessarily lining up with the end of the fiscal year. And obviously, a lot of governments face challenges throughout the year. Most governments have a bit of a contingency fund. But to see the deficit soar for the year that's ending at the end of the month, it was pretty alarming.
Yeah, I think there's something like 75 million goes, or 70 million or somewhere around there goes to the future fund when the deficit is inching to 160. What do you see, Jay, as the long-term strategy, or what do you think the strategy is? I mean, it feels like there is a lot on the horizon that hasn't arrived yet. We're told, oil looks like it could be on the upswing again. Certainly, as other countries without, quote unquote, the clean oil we have here, or the greener oil that we like to purport we have. As that becomes, and I mean, the demand for oil, by the way, in Asia is still it's greater than ever. Is that where we're putting all our, throwing all our cards into what may be to come? Is this a lot of prognosticating as opposed to, sitting down and facing the realities of what we're all going through right now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's certainly some reliance on seeing how the oil industry is going to do, what the pricing is, the development. But I think one thing that Alberta has learned and Newfoundland and Labrador has learned at certain times is that you really don't want to have to rely on what's going on in the oil industry, what's happening with prices, what price oil is set at, what price you're able to sell, because as both provinces have really seen, when things fall off, they really fall off. And if your budget's dependent on that, you can end up with a massive deficit and a very, very difficult fiscal situation. So I think it's important to make sure that the vast majority of the revenue you're getting from selling these resources needs to go into some sort of future fund, as they have in, for example, Norway, which has a future fund of over $1 trillion, and they're able to take advantage of interest earned every year to help pay for the budget, as opposed to taking the revenue directly. And then as soon as a tougher year comes along, your budget just falls apart.
It just feels like everybody knows what it's like to try to put away and save some money, a.k.a. a future fund, when you know you're already drowning in almost $18 billion of debt. I lost my train of thought there. I was just going to ask you about the... going back to, and I was trying to find the word for it, putting all the eggs. I don't suggest for 1 minute that we're putting all our eggs in the oil basket. I mean, we know, whether we want to talk green hydrogen, whether we want to talk critical minerals, whether we want to talk the tech sector, the fishery, has potential. But, we do know that there are other, hopefuls. I mean, when we look at critical minerals and electric vehicles and green hydrogen in particular, those are still years. Nothing is coming to fruition in the next year or two on those fronts, unless I can't imagine how long it takes to put up one windmill the size of almost 2 Confederation buildings, let alone hundreds of them. So I can't say that's not, in our near future. Just the whole budget to me just seemed counterintuitive. We have money, but we don't, and I know that's the game we have to play, but it's just we're getting deeper and deeper. And spending has always been the issue.
It is deeper and deeper. Spending is certainly an issue. Per capita spending in Newfoundland and Labrador, of course, is some of the highest in the country. And another thing that's concerning in the budget, and, it's hidden behind all the numbers, is, the government will say, so last year we had a deficit of, $350 million. But if you actually look at the numbers, and this is what governments all over Canada do, if you look at the actual net debt, that's increasing substantially more, like billion, as opposed to 300 million, for example. Mm-hmm. So governments like to say our operational budget, it's pretty close. But the reality is they're borrowing a lot more money than they'll tell you, and that's why the debt continues to really climb a lot faster than the government wants you to know. And I mean, they're saying, for example, that they expect to have a balanced budget next year, but that's the operational budget. Yeah. They're still expecting to borrow more money. And so that's a real concern. And I think that governments have to be frank with taxpayers. And the deficit number they give us should be how much is our debt changing, not what the operational number is, but how much more debt are you taking on every year? Because if we don't keep track of this, then the province is on track for some very difficult days ahead.
Yeah, and you won't see an appendix.
It's already alarming.
And you won't see an appendix in the budget documents that will spell that out for you, which is my point off the top, which is, as you just said it, trying to read between the lines, trying to read what it really means. This is a snapshot of the situation now, but it doesn't. It's not bookended by history and what's really the difficulties to come and what has to happen, to keep doing. I'm always uncomfortable, Jay, into the situation of governments doing what they have to do to stay in power at the peril sometimes of, the people that elect them.
Yeah, and certainly
politics,
they need to Yeah, and the need to maintain credibility is really important. When you push back, for example, the balanced budget, it was supposed to, the operational budget, be balanced this year. And so I think the government's going to have some credibility on the line when it comes to, what's going to happen next year. Are they going to just keep pushing things back and back and back? Because, frankly, that's just not acceptable. The province's debt is ballooning. Got to get control of it. So if they're running a small deficit this year, they really have to make sure that the books are in much better shape next year. And I would say also that we have to keep a close eye on what happens to make sure that the $150 million they're saying now doesn't turn into $350 million at the end of the year, which is what happened for last year. And so the debt grew considerably more than the government said it was going to.
Jay Goldberg with Taxpayer Federation. I can't tell you much. I appreciate the call and justifying my criticism of the numbers in the budget. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thanks again. All right, take care. Quick break, Fonts, and then back with another caller.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
And welcome back to the program. Just before we go to our next caller, just got a note here from VOCM's Sarah Strickland, live on the spot at one of our healthcare facilities, who tells me and confirms that, yes, that masking that was temporarily put in place as of, I believe, February the 1st of this year at hospitals, healthcare facilities, congregate living, long-term facilities. Yes, that is still in place. So thank you, Sarah Strickland, for that. On to line one, and Housing Minister is Fred Hutton. You're on the air.
Good morning, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm all right, sir, for Friday, and it's been a week. I don't need to tell you.
It has been, but I think it's been, parts of it have been good, parts of it have been, not so great. But obviously, we're moving forward. The budget was delivered yesterday, brought down by our finance minister, and I think that there's some good things in there, some positive things, specifically for my portfolio, but overall for people in Newfoundland and Labrador.
So I see, it's $36 million for homes in Corner Brook, I think, for 100 in Central Newfoundland and Labrador West. So that's a dollar figure, but it's not all about the bucks, right? So one thing I'm curious to know, maybe you can clarify. I know the headline today has been that NL Housing now has sort of been integrated into core government. Can you just give us a little bit of a layman's term of what's happening there, Fred?
Sure. So we're taking it integrating it into core government, Brian. We've done it with other entities in the province, like the school board, like Nilchi. So it's in line with what government has been doing over the last couple of years. We took 4 health boards in this province to make one so that there would be more effectiveness and efficiencies. Now, efficiencies doesn't mean that there's going to be job losses or anything like that. That's not going to happen as a result of this integration. It was clear yesterday in the news conference that there won't be job losses or any structural changes. And as a matter of fact, for right now, Brian, it is basically going to be status quo. And, this housing is a province-wide issue. This is not just a St. John's issue or St. John's Mount Pearl metro area or Avalon Peninsula. It is right across the province. And you'll see that in the budget. In your opening, you mentioned that there's housing for Central, badly needed. There's housing for Corner Brook, badly needed, 50 in each location roughly, and another 4 for Labrador West. There's housing for and funding for Nunatsiavut communities along the north coast of Labrador. This is not just a St. John's issue. We have to approach it from a provincial standpoint, and because it's a province-wide issue, it needs a government in the whole looking at it from all departments, quite frankly, because they do intersect.
Yeah, for obvious reasons. I mean, no, you're absolutely right, and you said the province. I mean, it's certainly national and arguably global. So no question there. And the need is everywhere. I guess the focus, of course, just being on the largest population in the province, I guess, always comes back to the city. And we know the city is on bust. I've been covering some council meetings lately. I haven't seen so many applications. A lot has to do, of course, with the federal prompting, as whether or not you call the city not ambitious enough. And then they turned around and asked for too much, and then they settle on a number. So, it's going gangbusters. We do see applications, and we do see a little bit more density being inserted into the city. I'm just curious, people are going to want to know, can we get an update a little bit, sorry to dig down past the budget, but into Tent City? And what's happening?
Well, folks are still there. But as I've said from the very beginning, since I took over in this portfolio, we have an emergency shelter line, and there is a process by which people get into the housing continuum, if you will, of, if you look at the very start of the housing continuum, it's when you're homeless or facing homelessness.
Yeah.
And if you're in that situation, you need to call our emergency shelter line. Just because somebody shows up at Tent City does not put them ahead of everybody else who's already been going through this process. And look, Brian, if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to read the number out because somebody might be listening this morning who knows somebody who needs help, or somebody themselves listening this morning who are facing the possibility of being evicted because they can't afford their rent or having to leave. Yep. And that number is 1-833-724-2444. Call there. You need to get on the list. So folks are still there. I've been down to the tent encampment. I've spoken with some people there. We went down the day before, or the day of the storm, a couple of weeks ago on a Friday. And with our community partners, and there are many who work in, them, you cover them, End Homelessness St. John's. I've heard some of them speaking on your station over the last day or so. Thrive, Stella Circle, Safe Haven. There are so many out there. I don't want to try to start naming them all because I'll forget some. They do this work each and every day. They have all recognized that in that housing continuum, the point of when you show up, say, and this is just hypothetically now, if you show up at Safe Haven, the LeMarchant Road Warming Center, and there's one for women and men there, or if you show up at Gathering Place, that's the starting point. And then our access table, our community access table, determines, okay, well, what's best for Brian or what's best for Fred? Because not everybody can just go into their own unassisted living situation. If they perhaps have a mental health issue that they're trying to deal with, or if they have an addictions issue and they need supportive living. So what our community partners have told us unequivocally is that the gap in our housing continuum, from the part where you're homeless until you're situated in somewhere where you are actually on your own or in some sort of living arrangement, which is not a tent or couch surfing, is our community transitional supportive. So it's the transition from being homeless to actually having somewhere. But folks need help. And that's why, with respect to the Comfort Inn, we are waiting to get our supportive folks down there, healthcare officials, addictions counselors, so that when people go in there, they're not just left on their own in a hotel room. They have the supports around them. But they do have the benefit of having their own room, their own washroom, that independence, but yet not living independent, because when they step out through that door, there's somebody there who can help them. And our community partners have said it unequivocally that was the gap, and that is why we're investing that money in the Comfort Inn to make sure that gap is filled. It's only one step, though, Brian. There's so many, and you talked about this extra help of building houses. So, and the St. John's Council being inundated with, zoning requests. It's because of perhaps because of the 5-point plan, where we're offering contractors and builders the opportunity to have incentives so that they can build more housing. But by doing that, they have to charge a lower rate of rent, but they get incentives to do it by, HST, GST wiped out, or lower interest rates, that kind of thing. I mean, this is something we could talk about for hours, and I know I've sort of gone all over the place on it, but it covers a wide range. It's not just about someone who's homeless. This is about housing in general, right across the province.
Fred, always appreciate it. We're blocked with calls. Thanks for the information, especially that phone line. We'll get it out there again. Of course, we've repeated it several times ourselves. I'd love to even get into the fire hose of information I'm sure you're even facing these days, or since you got the portfolio. Congratulations, all the best, and good luck with the budget.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the time, Brian. And again, if anyone needs some help, please call that line. We're happy to help. There's a staff here who are on the go 24 hours a day who can help out.
Thanks again, Fred. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Fonz, we go on break or go right to line? Quick break and back with, the Deputy Leader of the Federal Conservative Party of Canada right after this.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
Back to the show. Just very briefly before we go to our next caller, to the email around masking in hospitals. You mentioned Let's see, that masking is recommended and encouraged but not mandated. Well, I am reading directly from the NL Health Services release, which, just for clarification, does say required. Mandated, required, same thing. Let's go right to our next caller. The line, which line are we going? Right, the Deputy Leader of the Federal Conservative Party of Canada, Melissa Lantsman, you are on the air.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Let's see, you're the MP for Thornhill, Ontario, and you're born and raised there. That must be nice.
It is nice. It's not as nice as where you are some of the time of the year, but it's a little suburb north of Toronto, and it's I happen to think that it's got some of the best people in the country.
I've actually driven through Thornhill, so I know where it is. I was just thinking it must be nice to be able to actually represent it. You know, the place where you grew up.
I'm the first one. Yeah. I'm the first one to have grown up in that suburb because it's rather new. There's one old part, but it's a rather new 40-year-old suburb, and I'm the first one to have actually grown up there my whole life to be able to represent it. So. Driving around as a teenager, I know the streets really well already for those door knocking.
All those speeches are off the cuff, aren't they? So, Melissa, thanks for the call. I have an idea probably why you're calling, but you tell me what brings you to Open Line this morning?
Well, look, I wanted to put out there that what happened yesterday with a motion that was presented in Parliament to finally kill that carbon tax or go to a carbon tax election was defeated by Justin Trudeau with the help of the NDP and the help of the Bloc Québécois. That's going to stop the fact that he's going to spike the tax by 23% in less than 2 weeks from now. And I know that Newfoundlanders, just like everyone in the country, cannot afford this. It probably comes at the worst time in Canadian history. And it seems like these guys don't care.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find out here now. That's 2 votes, right? So the one on Wednesday was really specifically against the increase on April 1st. Is that correct?
That's right, yes.
And so the one yesterday, the back-to-back, would have been the one for the motion to the non-confidence motion on the carbon tax in general.
That's right. We brought a non-confidence motion to the House. That means if they had voted to spike that hike and eventually, hopefully, axe that tax. I mean, if they don't do it, we will after they are gone. But that was defeated yesterday, and it was defeated by every member except for Conservatives that will continue to fight this increase, and we will continue to try to put more money back in the pockets of every single Canadian who is struggling to put food on the table and gas in their car and heat their homes in a whole lot of places.
It must be interesting from afar, and I'd be curious to know your take on the sort of tete-a-tete that's going on between the Prime Minister and our Premier, Andrew Furey, over this. It makes politics and these types of issues make strange bedfellows and sometimes out-of-bedfellows. So I'm just curious how it looks from afar. Is it going over? Who's winning that war up along?
Well, look, Premier Furey joined 70% of premiers in this country, so he's certainly not offside with the constituents and the voters that he represents, just like the other 70% of premiers in the country are not offside with their constituents. But this is, it's not an issue of strange bedfellows. It's an issue of common sense. We've got at a time where the cost of living is increasing day by day, no matter what you buy, no matter where you buy it. And you've got premiers across the country fighting this prime minister to stop his increase. That's common sense, and it's the common sense dictated by the common people for a common cause, and that's to make sure that they can put food on the table and gas in their car and get to work. This is not an environmental plan. It is a tax plan. It is one that is costing Canadians way more than they ever get back in any kind of rebate.
I've met your leader, Pierre Poilievre, a few times now here in the city, and he's been getting some crowds in Central and West in the West Coast of the province and up in Labrador. And I'm Clifford Small, of course, next to his side the whole time. He's certainly they're very visible and big crowds. What's your impression? Have you made it to the island yet, and do you plan to?
Yeah, we're planning to come this summer. I gotta go stomp around with Cliff, who espouses the beauty of Newfoundland in every single thing that he says. He is a great representative for his constituents and, frankly, the whole province. And we've been seeing these crowds all over the country. Thousands of people rallying for what Canada used to be, for a better life, for a Canada that you can afford to do, to work hard and get ahead. That's the message from Pierre Poilievre. It's the message in Newfoundland. It's the message in Nova Scotia. It's the message in Nanaimo. It's the message in the Northwest Territories. And it's a message that is resonating with Canadians everywhere.
It seems to me, and in some ways, I'm maybe really simplifying this a little bit, but it's the present versus the future. Everything that Trudeau and the Liberals seem to be speaking about is, this is for the kids and this is climate. This is something we want to be the leaders. We want to be out in front of this. Want to do what we can, and there's Holt standing their ground with some nasty stuff said about the environment minister and how off base and all this sort of thing versus. In the short term, it's tough. The cost of living, the potential, not the potential, it looks like the increase that's coming on April 1st, and all the other financial and economic pressures on me and every other family and every other person in this country, except maybe, as you would argue, the Liberals. But I just wonder, is it not just very much the present versus the future looking forward?
Well, I think this is about the future, too. I think you've got 35-year-olds living in their basement, delaying things like having a family, doing all the right things, maybe going to school or trying to get a job after. If you do all of the right things in this country and you can't afford a home in a safe neighborhood, like everything is falling apart. And you don't need the data from the parliamentary budget officer to say the Canadians get back less than they pay into the carbon tax. You can see it. You can see it with 2 million people eating in food banks, with 1 million more. Do you know in Toronto, 300,000 people used a food bank last month? That's unheard of, and we're seeing tent cities pop up. Not just in the big cities across the country, but we're seeing them almost everywhere.
And I won't deny, Melissa, that
Canada.
Yeah, I won't deny that the social, the groups, the housing groups in our city and our province are reporting similar things.
Yeah, no doubt. And this is a Canada we haven't seen. Look, I got to tell you, I'm sort of the typical Torontonian. My parents immigrated here in the 70s, and my dad was an uncredentialed engineer who drove cab, and he put his wife through school. But at that time, you can buy a home in a safe neighborhood and make sure your kids are better off than you were. And in one generation, you can go from the front row of a taxi to the front row of Parliament Hill, and that's the kind of country we want to build.
Well, I'm almost up to the clock here. I appreciate the time. I did want to ask you, sure, I had a quick look at your bio. What do you think of this kid, Arjun Nimala?
That's a good question.
You are a Blue Jays fan.
I don't know him yet. We'll see. I'm a long-suffering Blue Jays fan, like many others, and I want to be able to go to another World Series. Before
which one did you?
Before I leave this,
93 or 92?
93, and I was only 9 years old at the time. So I want to be able to enjoy a win. We're all allowed to cheer for the Blue Jays. That's Canada's team, and we'll see if this kid performs. We've had a lot of promising stars, and hasn't taken us much past October baseball.
I just have one question. If you can answer this question, I'm not going to suggest career change, but, the Jays might be calling. What is wrong with Mr. Manoah? We have a lot of Blue Jays fans listening to this program. Just want you to know.
You got a little Blue Jays fan? Well, we've got lots. Yeah, I'm gonna save my commentary so I don't make any enemies. But I think. It's really disappointing. We need to build a team. We need to build a team for the future, just like we need to build a Canada for the future. And I think maybe the same guys that are running the Jays are running Ottawa. So I'll leave it at that.
Oh, ouch! I'll keep that one. Fonz, can you record that in the logger for me? Just last question. Who do we need? Name one player you'd like to see them pick up. A pitcher? Probably a pitcher.
Yeah, definitely a pitcher. Anybody who can pitch.
Melissa, we almost had Shohei.
Oh, that was the Shohei watch in Toronto was like a sport. This was refreshing the screen. That would have been big for the city. It would have been big for baseball.
Melissa Landsman, the MP for Thornhill, Ontario. Thank you so much. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the opinions. I'll say good luck, unbiasedly, but we'll be watching with great interest as the Conservatives continue to put the boots to the Liberals on the carbon tax. Thanks very much for the call.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Fonz, look at that. With 20 seconds to spare, we're going to head off to the news of Brian Medore. I'm Brian Callahan on Open Line. See you after the break.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And welcome back to the show. Just before the break, of course, we were speaking with the deputy leader of the Conservative Party, Melissa Landsman. And just perusing after, I was wondering how our Liberal MPs had voted on those two votes, two motions by the opposition Conservatives. I have a listing here, and I can see that at least Ken McDonald did vote against this particular carbon tax election opposition motion. That was the one yesterday. I don't see the record yet of the one the day before, but I know he voted against this one. We know, of course, he has voted with the Conservatives against the carbon tax on two previous occasions, but when the either the rubber hit the road or they had some discussions, possibly, it seems that that has been switched. That's the best word I can come up for now. I can't see a record of the vote on Wednesday, but if anyone out there does, or Mr. McDonald himself, welcome to call and let us know how he and the other Liberal MPs voted on that motion. Let's go to line one, and Grace, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, Grace.
Hi there, and thank you for getting me on this morning to talk about the great big book sale.
I do apologize.
Have you heard about it?
The last couple of days, I know I saw your name there in the queue a couple of times, but with everything hitting the fan, as it were, the last couple of days, apologies, my mother is probably listening, although I didn't say the word, did I? So the last couple of days have been kind of crazy here, but you're on the air, and I want to hear what you got to say about books and libraries.
Okay. Thank you. Well, it's really about an enormous book sale with at least 40,000 books that the members of the community have donated to us. Us being the CFUW, the Canadian Federation of University Women. We raise this money from books to provide scholarships for students around the province, to post-secondary institutions. And we also do community outreach with the money. So we're selling about 40,000 books or so, and most of them are going for $3 or less. So it's a real bargain. People come in, they get an armful of books or a carload in some cases for very little money.
Grace, where and when is the big, probably people are wondering most off the top of their head?
Oh, yeah. Well, it started yesterday at 1 o'clock, and we went through till 9 in the evening. And it's on today from 10 to 9 tonight. And then tomorrow, Saturday, everything goes half price. And that will be from 10 to 1.
And you may have said this, you may have said it or I missed it, but where exactly?
No, I didn't say yet. It's the same location as last year, which is 56 Kenmount Road. It's the former Bouclair site.
Right.
It's on the Avalon Mall parking lot. It's between Golden Phoenix Restaurant and Globo Shoes.
Yes, the Global Phoenix Buffet. I just can't even look. I've eaten too much there, and buffets are not my thing. I always take too much. I don't make the most of them. But that's not why you're calling. I will say this, Grace: 40,000 books. Where are they primarily coming from? Just all donations, hey?
Everything has been donated by the community. In fact, they start calling us in the summer to see when we're going to have this sale, so they can bring in their books, donate them, and then buy some more back.
You know, it's funny. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, it's fine.
I was just going to say, it's not to play up. I mean, I'm a bad book reader. I can't get through 2 pages, let alone 3, without nodding off. I don't know what it is. And the irony of that is, of course, I've actually written one. So I can't even read my own to know what's in it to get through the next one. And that's just me. I know people are ferocious book readers. The only book I ever got all the way through, and I don't know what this says, but was the old Amityville Horror original book, which just happened to be on a table in our house when I was a kid, and I read it, and I didn't read another one for years after that, and that probably is why.
Well, we wondered when e-readers came out if people would still be buying books, but they certainly are. I mean, they're really buying, and we certainly appreciate it. In fact, we call this a literary event more than a sale.
And not a throwback. I mean, you're right. There's nothing, and I will say it. I mean, I know that there's nothing like having a book in your hand. I've watched people with the e-readers, but it's really not the same of feeling a book and turning the pages. You said what? The average is probably only about $3 a book. I mean, some of these books must be a real steal. Do you look through them for anything that might be, first editions, or anything that might be more significant than the rest that are in the pile?
Yes, we do actually. We have one woman who researches the books, particularly those that are older than 1930. And so we have a collectible section. In fact, as you go in the door, it's right in front of you. So those would be more than the others, but most of the books would be $3, $2, $1.50 even.
Have you found anything that, you'd rather just maybe should forward onto the rooms, or anything that's significant just by accident? I mean, how people stumble on great artworks just by total accident. Those kind of stories blow me away. I'm always looking at the backs of my art in my house just in case. But do you know what I mean? Like a diamond in the rough that maybe shouldn't go on sale and maybe should go to an archive.
Yes, that has happened. Yeah.
Anything particular?
We keep our eyes open.
Okay. Do you remember anything in particular that people might be familiar with?
I don't know if you're familiar with it, but one year we were selling books online, and the time was coming when it was going to close, and it was right at the time we were having our annual meeting. So we watched it, and watched it on screen, actually, as the price changed, and I think that one sold for over $600, and it was a book about golf. So, it just so happened that we did pick it up as being a valuable one. So that was good. That's
interesting how you went about just noticing that the clicks kept going, and it's like, wow, that must be worth something.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, the books are all worth something to someone.
Oh, sure.
So, so we're really, really happy. And I'd like to point out that we have our books organized I would like to say better than, but certainly as well as any of the large bookstores. So everything is categorized, and when you come in, you get a piece of paper telling you where everything is, so you can zoom right for the kind of books that you like. Yeah, and I imagine it runs the gamut, right? It's right down from kids right up to every category. Yes, we have thousands of children's books. Yeah. Well, that alone... We've got thousands of almost everything. That alone ought to keep it hopping through the weekend, hey? Oh, yeah. It's going to... Well, actually, tomorrow we're only open with the half-price sale from 10 o'clock to 1. We usually get a good crowd for that. And then at 2 o'clock, the charities are coming in. A lot of those have been registered already, and if they haven't, they can still come. So from 2 to 2:30, they come in and pick up free books. So they can do what they like with those. They can use them in their programs, but many of them sell them themselves and make money. So that's another good thing. And then students come in from 2:30 to 3 o'clock. So I was just in contact with the student union at Memorial, reminding them about this. So from 2:30 to 3, any student at any level can get free books. So wait, you're telling me there's a half-price sale on $3 books? Oh, yes. Half-price sale on $1 books, too, on everything. Everything. So they start out by being very little. They end up being almost nothing in price. But we still make money because all the books were donated to us. And we don't want to store them. We would have to pay storage, and we'd rather start out fresh every year with new books. Fair enough. All right, so 56 Kenmount, the Beauclair business there, just next to the Golden Phoenix in the Avalon Mall parking lot. Grace, good luck with it. Thank you very much, and thank you for covering this. Absolutely, anytime, and by all means, as Patty would say, or as we always say here, just follow up and let us know how it went and what kind of scholarships you're able to distribute in the coming future. Oh, I will do that. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks again. That's Grace there for the Libraries Associated, the big, massive book sale going on the next couple of days, and down at 56 Kenmount there in the plaza today and tomorrow. Off to the break, back with John Harris on with Monsu on the provincial budget.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Going now to line 2, and the Director of External Affairs, Communication and Research with the Memorial University Students' Union, John Harris, you are on the air.
How's it going, Brian? Good to talk to you.
Great. Same to you.
Right on. So I'm just calling. Thanks for taking my call. I'm just calling to talk about your favorite subject, the budget that came out yesterday. Now, I really want to say that this is an extremely disappointing budget for students and for young people of this province. There's basically nothing in there for us. All we're seeing is almost a $14 million cut on its way to eliminate the tuition offset grant, which made tuition at MUN somewhat affordable for 20 years in this province. And, a lot of people had an opportunity to study here that they would never have otherwise gotten hadn't it been for the tuition freeze. Unfortunately, we're seeing this government continue to defund our only public university. So definitely disappointing day for students today, Brian.
Yeah, I wonder, whether you think, the government's attempt to make MUN more autonomous is going to an extreme here. You know what I'm saying?
I just don't see the logic with trying to completely cut MUN's funding down to just kind of do away with them. I think we need a leadership from the province that recognizes the history of this university. This is not some private university that is about making profit or about having an elite institution that's only available to some people. This was the dream of our province, to be able to educate our young people, to be able to, where no one had a chance before, where they had to be sent off to Nova Scotia or to Ontario, and it was only the few and only the rich that could go. This is Memorial University of Newfoundland and Labrador. This is the university that was meant to give all people in this province an opportunity to be educated and to if they want to have a post-secondary education, to be able to do so. And we've had very, very affordable rates because of this legacy, and because of why we were proud to offer our young people these opportunities. I mean, under Smallwood in the 60s, we had free education for 4 years. And for 20 years since Brian Tobin, there's been a understanding that the Memorial is important to the province, and that's why we've invested in its success. So this change of direction, I think, is very, very short-sighted.
Yeah, I'm looking, it feels like deja vu again. I'm looking, but I remember, we tried to pour over last year's budget in preparation and anticipation of the next one. And one of the things I had noted was the story we had from last year about Monsu and the Faculty Association, deeply disappointed, as I said, and this is last year, in a $10 million funding cut. I just wonder where you think, did you have a hand in the consultations this year, and what did you say, and what was the feedback?
We met with Krista Lynn Howell, Minister Howell, a couple times this year. We met with the Premier last year, and we made it clear that students of this province can't afford Memorial anymore. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. We've already seen a 20% drop in enrollment. Out of those talks with the Premier, we managed to get a $50 per course reduction from one of these ancillary fees that keeps on getting added to Memorial to students every few years. When new cuts come in, they add new fees that don't count as tuition. So we did succeed in getting $50 per course off. That's a $500 saving, but compared to the increase, it's a drop in the bucket. I mean, students are still paying $3,000 more per year. The cost of a domestic tuition is now the same as at a province, so we're having the same deal as anyone else in the province. It's now almost $30,000 total tuition and fee expenses for an entire degree, and and for international students, we're looking at an $80,000 plus degree to come to Memorial, the most expensive Atlantic tuition in the Atlantic region. So it's giving a real reason for young people not to stick around and not to come here, not to start a life here. And that is a mistake. I like even, we talk about the Premier Economic Recovery Team report, the big reset. And I'm by no means a fan of that report. I think a lot of it is a very disastrous way to approach governance. But one thing that it did say is that with the aging of the population and the decline in birth rates, young people will have to be more productive and better educated as they build and power the new economy. So, and how does that work when you have a need for young people to be more educated, to grow the economy, and the report insists that the young people will need to hold the debt of this province and work to pay it off? How can we become more educated if you're making it twice as expensive to go to university, if you're making the mountain of debt that we'd have to go into to get a degree so expensive that it's actively discouraging people from enrolling? We've seen a 20% drop of enrollment already. It's a very short-sighted plan because we talk about bringing down the deficit, and I understand that there's a lot of concern around there, but this is not the place to do it because university is an economic driver for the province. It allows us to have an educated workforce that allows industry to flourish. It's opened up our capacity in so many industries, including the tech industry, in mining, in fishing and fishery and boating, and it opens up so many opportunities, including hundreds of millions of research dollars coming from federal government. So we're really taking a short-sighted approach here. I mean, I'm also no fan of a lot of the decisions made by the administration of the university, and I know there was that Auditor General report, which had a lot of blatant misuses of funds by the past president. But at the same time, there's not going to be $68.4 million of savings coming out of administrative bloat. They're going to try to take it from students, and we're passing on the debt of this province to the young people, which is really going to stunt our growth.
Yeah, and you talked about the blueprint for the future that talks, a lot about the importance of education. But and of course, the government yesterday was bellowing from the rooftops about the increase in population. Both on the immigration front and just overall population growth in the province, and whether we want to educate and what ages are coming in, or the education facilities to be able to move them on to the next level. These companies like Verafin and MISA and all these successful companies who either come through MUN or the Genesis Centre, what can you say? It does seem counterintuitive that the major post-secondary institution in the province doesn't get the same attention, but I don't know where we go from there.
Well, absolutely, and if you look at the social sector as well, we're seeing 100 social work needing 100 social workers. Right. We're having gaps in those systems. We're having gaps in nursing, where we're even having nurses not getting job offers while we have a huge shortage. Or
I think the comparison was made to nurses having to pay for those terms on the floors as opposed to engineers, for example.
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing, there's nothing in this budget to give funding for nursing students who have to do hundreds and hundreds of hours to even qualify, and they actually have to pay to do those placements. So,
something I didn't know. It was news to me. I had no idea.
It's ridiculous. I mean, we have a system that is burning nurses out even before they get their degree. And, nurses know how they're valued in this province just based off trying to go through the placements, trying to afford their basic cost of living by working a job on top of a full-time job as a nurse. So it's putting young people just in an impossible situation. It's a short-sighted, it's a mistake. I think that it's time that, and that's recognized. I think that, we don't want this legacy of this province, or the legacy of this premier or this government, to be the person that put the nail in the coffin of Memorial University. I think that it's the way that we're heading. It's looking more and more uncertain. I mean, students don't really know whether or not tuition will continue to go up. There's we've seen even a cut to the campus renewal fee offset, down by $3.5 million.
I noticed that in the line there. Yeah, it's funny. You must be looking over my shoulder.
But so students are uncertain, and that's really not a good thing. We also, Memorial has its infrastructure problems. We have an aging campus with a lot of asbestos and crumbling hallways. And we have over a $400 million deferred maintenance. So we're not really seeing much capital investment in MUN at the moment, which is you want to have a university that is able to attract good research, attract students from other provinces, from other countries. And we want to be able to grow the province and get young people to stay here. But the province needs to stop finding or giving reasons for young people to look elsewhere. If you're starting your life off with a $30,000 student loan, just to get a degree from MUN, and afterwards you might not find a good paying job because, now you need even more than undergraduate degree. You need experience, or you need a master's degree. You might not find an opportunity here in the province, and you might have to leave and go to the mainland or find another place. So it's a short-sighted thing. We want young people to stay here, to get educated, to use their expertise to grow the province and to build our tax base, and to it's an investment. I think that's the thing that's missing from here. It's a short-sighted way to try and use young people to pay down the deficit, but all in all, it's going to cost the province.
John Harris, thanks for the call, and thanks for the advocacy and your work with MUN, Director of External Affairs Communication Research. Great title. Thanks for the call.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Good luck.
Take care.
Okay, you too. All right, Fonz, off to the break, and back with another caller.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And welcome back to the program. On to line 3. And Minister Pam Parsons, you're on the line.
Good morning, Brian, and certainly good morning to all your listeners, and thank you for taking my call.
No problem at all. I can't imagine why you're calling.
Well, I know. Obviously, I represent the district, the proud district, strong district of Harbour Grace, Portagrave. And every year, Brian, since I've been elected, and even prior to my election, when I worked in journalism, covering stories about the fishery.
I recall it well.
It seems to be every year, around this time, there's always a lot of contention, with the exception of a couple of years back. I remember everybody was pretty happy. There was a really good price for crab. But I just wanted to, get on here and assure my constituents that they have my full support. I mean, I appreciate the fishery. I appreciate the work for the inshore harvesters as well as offshore, and of course our plant workers, because, Brian, I have all of these players in my district. I have large plants, I have smaller plants, a lot of inshore harvesters, of course, as well as people who work in the offshore. So I just want to reassure them that I'm taking every concern and every bit of feedback back to, of course, the Premier, Minister Elvis, Minister Elvis Lovelace, as well as the Premier. And let me tell you, we have all been having conversations around the clock in the late hours. So I'm just calling on all the players involved. Of course, the FFAW, the ASP. We haven't heard from them yet. They were supposed to speak yesterday, so I'm anxiously waiting as well to see what the ASP has to say. But ultimately, I'm calling on everybody. Let's get this figured out. The Premier and Minister Lovelace toured the province this past fall, talking to harvesters across Newfoundland and Labrador. I attended the meetings, of course, with harvesters in my district in Harbour Grace, Portagrave. And, there certainly is a need for change in this fishery, and with regards to more healthy competition. And from, what the Premier has said to me, he's open to the outside buyers. He's open to increasing capacity in licensing, and as well as a complete review of the corporate concentration and, of course, foreign ownership in our Newfoundland and Labrador fishery. So I'm very passionate about the fishery. I grew up out here in Conception Bay North. We know how valuable it is, not just here in my district, but in Newfoundland and Labrador. It is one of our most, if not the most valuable renewable resource here that we have in our province. So I'm just hoping to see a resolution, and so also but something fair for everyone, because the harvesters are having a hard time, as we know how they've been demonstrating, but at the same time, I'm also hearing from very concerned plant workers. My office, we have a number of visitors, a number of phone calls in the last couple of days who are also worried about how this is going to roll out. So hopefully, Brian, we can see some healthy changes made that are needed for everyone to succeed, because we've got all the ingredients to have the absolute best fishery in the world, and I believe our product is second to none. So I just wanted to put that out there and know that I'm working with my team, of course, in government as well. I'm talking to harvesters daily. So like everyone, I want to see a resolution to this as well. So I just wanted to call in. I also want to touch on some points to our budget yesterday.
Just before you go to that.
It's a very interesting budget.
Just before you go to that, I just want to mention, I know you're not the fisheries minister, and obviously you mentioned there just that the ASP we haven't heard from. Now, they did cancel the news conference that was planned for yesterday morning, but they did issue a news release, and one of the main lines in that, I guess, to read the whole news release, but, they were addressing what they called, quote, the propaganda and misinformation being spread by the union and the harvesters. So, talking about behavior defined as threats, intimidation, and harassment. I wonder, I know you're not the fisheries minister, but I just wonder what you make of, we're back to this after 7 months ago. We had 7 months to get it to some kind of resolution, 7 months, and it just seemed on the outside looking in that everybody was sort of content to wait again to the 10th or 11th hour.
Absolutely. Well, it's complex. The fishery is complex, and I will not stand here and pretend to be an expert on the fishery, because I'm certainly not. But
the players know the industry. It's complex for me and you, maybe, but
I think we need a whole change in our fishery. I mean, I've been hearing that from my harvesters as well as plant workers, as people who are just been around it and lived here in our coastal communities. I think we need a big change. We need an overall change in our fishery, how this fishery operates, because every year we find ourselves here. I remember in COVID, it was contentious about what was going to happen with the fishery. And again, last year, we saw what happened last year. And I'll never forget Minister Derek Bragg, who is no longer with us today, went out and stood on the steps. I mean, the stress that was there by everyone, that the harvesters were there, of course, on the stairs of the building. The minister went out. So every year we find ourselves here. So, let's
but we shouldn't, right? We know we're going to. It's not like we don't know.
It's time for change.
Yeah, it's not like we don't know this is going to happen. I mean, the years I've covered it every year, the last 10, 15 years throughout, the fisheries broadcast even, I'll say it. But, I mean, I remember it's just cyclical. It's almost like the iron ore. It just comes around and then it busts, and then it's boom and bust, But the thing is, the difference with the fishery is that resource, as you just correctly said, we've got the ingredients, that's the word you used, and the people, and the resource.
We do.
And the know-how.
I believe us.
And yet we can't get out of our own way,
Absolutely. Everywhere we go,
And we can't get out of our own way. So it's great to hear that the government is fully behind changing the fishery. To what extent, though? Because, again, there's been a lot of words and a lot of window dressing, and here we are 7 months after a total collapse last year. Lawsuits are still, the FFAW is being taken to court by the seafood producers still. I don't know how they negotiate in that atmosphere while that court action's going on, because the tie-up last year is now the subject of a court action. So, we're getting nowhere fast, and it's almost one step, dare I say one step forward. I don't even think we've had one forward, let alone two back.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, I'm just calling on everyone involved, and there are many players in this industry, involved in this. Everybody's valued, everybody's needed. Let's figure it out. We have the best fishery in Newfoundland and Labrador, and we deserve to have it work properly. Yeah. So let's explore those changes. The Premier has said to me he's open to changes. He's open to these suggestions. He's been on record saying about increased capacity. Of course, we're waiting on DFO to see what the quota is going to be. Because again, the feds are involved in this as well. So let's get it right.
There are people who would say that could even.
My harvesters know.
There are people who.
I'm listening to them.
Yeah, there are people who say that could even extend to, talking to Ottawa about the whole quota control and TAC. That's a whole other big. That would require something else. But in the meantime, the point is well made. I know you wanted to get onto the budget. Sorry.
Yep, and again, increased capacity. I know that before we leave that topic, the Premier has said that, and of course I'm advocating, and I'm going to mention, my hats off to everybody who works in this industry. I've got a small business out here, Bay Roberts Seafoods. They're working hard. They contribute to the industry. I know that they're applying, year after year for licensing. So just know that I'm advocating on your behalf, and of course I'm going to work with my team to get the best overall, results that we can have. Of course, that's being the Premier and my colleague, the Minister for Fisheries. So let's make this the best fishery. Like I said, we have the ingredients. Let's get a resolution so everybody can get out there, get to work, and be doing what they want to do, because no one wants to be in that parking lot. And that goes for everyone who's there.
Yeah, and having pushes coming to shoves and all the rest of it. So it's just...
Yeah, so let's get at it. Let's do what we do. Let's do what we need to do. Get in the room. Let's make this work. And I call it everyone involved.
It's great words. Let's see. Yeah.
And so I want to move on to something important about the budget. It is... I think, certainly is a good balanced budget for the people of the province. I mean, honestly, I'm speaking because, of course, the first budget I was involved in was the 2016 budget, which was a very harsh budget. But I want to point out something in particular that my constituents, in particular my parents, school parents, have been advocating for, was the elimination of the 1.6-kilometer busing policy. So
Can I get a round of applause?
Well, I'm telling you, I am happy to see, and I applaud the Minister, Crystal Lynn Howell. It was something that she dug in on right away. She represents a rural district as well, and it's something that we hear from, especially in rural Newfoundland and Labrador, because we don't have the infrastructures and the sidewalks and the same setup as say our metro residents do. So I'm very happy. Of course, we worked hard to advocate to get this done, and so I'm happy to say that's finally eliminated, the 1.6 kilometer, because I know that really hits home to constituents in my district. It's something I hear about at the end of summer. That's when the calls start coming. So it was started last year, rather, as a rollout, as a pilot. But now I'm happy to say, and as the minister is very happy to talk about, she talks about it every time, the elimination of the 1.6. So I'm happy that we're making good progress. From my department perspective, of course, women and gender equality, we've got some significant investments there as well for gender to ultimately eradicate gender-based violence. Some significant funding there for our stakeholders in violence prevention for Indigenous, as well as we recently signed a bilateral agreement with the federal government, which will see $13.6 million over 4 years come to stakeholders in our province, of course, with the province contributing as well as the federal government. So I just want to say, to get these points out there. And important, Brian, and I mean, I can appreciate this, as I said, coming back from the 2016 budget, going through it. There are no new taxes, no tax increases, or no new fees, obviously. And cost of living is always at the forefront for every conversation I have with colleagues within government. And, I'm happy to say we also have the lowest tax on gas in the country. And that's being maintained. I think it's 8.05 cents per litre reduction on the price of the gasoline and diesel. 50%, Brian, as well, reduction of the cost of the registration, motor vehicle registration. So that's staying in place. Of course, it's only half the price. We've introduced that, I think, the last couple of years. That's staying where it is. There's also free driver medicals for people 75 and older. Also, the continued removal of the 15% retail sales tax on home insurance, and maintaining, of course, the home heating supplement. So there are a lot of good things in here. The big investment, the largest investment ever in healthcare and in seniors and in housing. I heard my colleague Fred Hutton on earlier, as well, to get some points across about Newfoundland member housing. And, of course, the investment in the housing and poverty reduction. And so there's a lot of good things in here. I mean, I encourage everyone, certainly take their time to go through this budget and see how it impacts everybody's personal incomes and everybody's pocketbook, because that's something that people care about.
Are you concerned? You mentioned everyone's pocketbook. What about government's pocketbook? I mean, are you not concerned with the elephant in the room, being the debt? And I mean, we're spending more. We've always talked about spending is out of control, and yet we're in debt. There are $1 billion to service our debt alone. I mean, are you concerned as that as well? I guess what people want to know.
Yeah, well, I think everybody is concerned about that, and I always compare it to like a personal credit card. I mean, and as you know, I mean, an elephant in the room, what we inherited with the Muskrat Falls price tag. I mean, thank God that we have the rate mitigation as we do from Ottawa. The rate mitigation provided by the federal government that supports the people of this province, so our power rates don't double. So imagine if we didn't get that. Let's imagine if we didn't have that support, from the feds at this time, and they just shut the door and said, "No, you're on your own. It's your project." Imagine if we didn't have that. with what people are facing this day and age, with the cost of living, our gas, groceries, everything that we go to buy, whether it be supplies to even build a home, everything is sky high. But imagine if we didn't have that rate mitigation, and our Newfoundland power bills were double what they are now.
Yeah.
I know mine's pretty significant.
Minister, I wonder, people are probably shouting at the radio saying, is there a shelf life on attaching our debt to Muskrat Falls?
Well, until we can get to a place where we can be back in surplus, I know I will give my a lot of credit to Minister Cody, our Deputy Premier. She works tirelessly, and she has definitely taken us to a place of improvement since her time as Finance Minister. And I mean, it's again, I'm not an expert in finance as well, but I certainly appreciate the work that her team has been doing. I know how much they've been working. It's my understanding she actually slept at the Confederation building the night before last.
Took the next words right out of my mouth. What did you do? Did you hunker down too, or?
It was an early morning. I was up at 3:30. I made my way in from my district, and I was up at 3:30, and I didn't get to bed. I had an event as well. I was in there early. Of course, as you know, we brought down that budget in a way that it's never been brought down before. And then when we clued up, I had an event actually in Portagrave last night. It was an appreciation dinner for the boat lighting and the people who sponsored that wonderful event. And so I had to make my way down there last night. So it was a long day and night for me. I didn't get back home until probably about around 8:30 last night. But you know what? That's this work. My people, my constituents, I value them. And again, anybody who wants any help going through this budget to see what's in it for them, certainly call my constituency office. And I'll do everything I can to help guide. And, of course, there are programs people can avail of, whether it's for the home improvement, modification. There's a load of stuff in government, but it takes time to go through them and certainly look what is available. But certainly call my office. And, Brian, my constituency office number is 786-1372. Certainly call. We'll always do our best to help guide people to get them to where they need to go.
Yeah, there was certainly a long couple of days, Minister, and add to it, you just reminded me, a couple hours or each way, or an hour and a half or so each way on the highway. So and I will say that too. You reminded me of another good point. Yes, I travel on the Veterans Memorial Highway, of course, in the Trans-Canada. The faint of heart.
And something that we're investing as well is speed cameras. There's going to be cameras implemented in different areas of our province throughout the Trans-Canada, and we're putting one. There will be a camera installed, to my understanding, as well on the veterans. And as you know, that's also something that's going to hopefully promote and increase safety. Because on our roadways, we have to do our part. We also have to contend with moose. I tell many times in the evenings I've been driving back and forth, and I've seen my share.
Yeah.
It's funny because people who have moose licenses this past year, I hear a lot of my constituents say, I haven't got my moose, can't find the moose. But, there's no trouble to see them on the road sometimes.
Yeah, what's the word for it? We shy away against taking them out from the highway, of course, against the law, and shouldn't even joke about that. Yes. But just on that point, sometimes it's not the moose, it's the car coming the other way. And beyond speed cameras, we should have some common sense cameras. That's just a suggestion.
Well, everybody, let's do our part to keep each other safe, and everybody else is on the roads. We share those roads with everybody, whether it be pedestrians or motorists. So let's certainly do our part to stay safe and to get to where we're going safely and to get home safely to our families at the end of the day.
Could not agree more.
Thank you for your time. And again, I put that out there. Certainly call my office. I'm here to help to do what I can. And so take good care. And again, a good morning and happy Friday to you, Brian, and to all of our listeners across Newfoundland and Labrador.
Thanks again. Minister Pam Parsons, Minister responsible for Women and Gender Equality. Thanks so much for the call, and good luck, as I said, with other members with the budget. All right, off to break, Fonts, and then back with Clifford Small, Conservative member for Coast Bay Central Notre Dame.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
And welcome back to the show. Now let's join line one and the MP for Coast Bay Central Notre Dame. I said Notre Dame, but I say both. Clifford Small, you're on the air. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Callahan. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, sir. I think the last time we spoke was on the top of Atlantic Place, or at least a parking garage.
So how are you hearing me here? I've got you on speakerphone.
Sounds fine to me, Fonts. Is Mr. Small coming in? Yes, you're all good.
Okay, good.
So, a couple of interesting days here and there. Are you here in the province now, or are you up along?
No, I'm in Ottawa now because I'm going to be attending Prime Minister Mulroney's funeral tomorrow. A Canadian Prime Minister that did so much for Newfoundland and Labrador, where would we be today without the Atlantic Accord? I have to go and pay my respects to him.
Absolutely. Where we start, I mean, we just went down this road, of course, when the former Prime Minister passed away a couple of weeks ago. I understand now he's in repose in Montreal. Is that correct? Or
Pardon me?
I think he's in repose now at Montreal. Is not in Ottawa.
Yes.
The casket's
in
now
Montreal.
Yeah, right. Right. So when does that take place today? So you're going to make respects. I think the funeral is Saturday morning, tomorrow morning, I believe.
Yeah, the funeral's at 11 tomorrow morning in Montreal.
And you're attending as well?
Yes.
Well, what can I say? I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't mention it off the top, and I meant to, but of course, the former Prime Minister, what can you say? We all have some stories to tell, I can tell you that, even in my early days. But no, absolutely good on you, and you're right. I mean, where would we be from the Accord days and on up through? So, a great diplomat, there's no question about that. He's well respected around the world, no matter the color.
Absolutely.
I mean, the color of the party, I should say.
Well, but it is of note that it was a Conservative Prime Minister that saw value in returning some royalties from our offshore to our province, and Premier Peckford fought former Prime Minister late Pierre Elliott Trudeau to get a fair share of those royalties for Newfoundland and Labrador. And when Prime Minister Mulroney came along, he worked out the deal. So that was wonderful for our province.
And look at us today. Have not has been. Oh no, wait, we're back. We're back to. We are back. Have not, aren't we? Look at that.
There you go.
It was nice when we could say it, but anyway, we won't get down that road. Tell me about the 2 votes in the House of Commons the last couple of days, Clifford. Were you in the chamber for both? And I hate to have to ask you, but I haven't heard otherwise. But are you aware of how the Liberal MPs voted from this province?
I'm aware of how they voted. I was in the chamber.
And would you care to share that with us?
And, these increases in carbon tax are going to make us even more have-not with the 23% increase that's coming in carbon tax on April 1st. The votes in the House, the vote to stop the increase in carbon tax, that motion we lost, of course. Mm-hmm. The MPs from Newfoundland and Labrador all voted against it except myself. And MP McDonald simply didn't vote on that one for some reason, but he didn't vote against our motion, and he simply just chose not to vote.
And he's welcome certainly to come on the show and let us know, what his thinking was there, why one and not the other. Not to put it all on them, but I mean, obviously it's a unique situation, and I can't imagine how I mentioned earlier to the deputy leader of the Conservative Party, I'm sure Melissa Lansman. Well, she, we were just talking about the sort of, bemusing, if you will, but awkward and uncomfortable and bad for us situation now between, when the Tories talk about the Liberal Premier and a Liberal Prime Minister and should be an advantage to a province. Doesn't seem to have worked out that way this way, on this issue anyway.
Premier Fury's been advocating against the carbon tax for about a year now, I guess. Prior to that, they fully supported carbon tax. But I think back a few years ago when the idea of the carbon tax was first brought in, nobody realized the impact that it would have, but now we're seeing it play out. And the NDP Liberal plan to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents by 2030. Can you imagine the impact that it's going to have then? I mean, we're okay. So by July 1st, including the clean fuel standard, which we call carbon tax number 2, it's possible that Newfoundland and Labradorians will be paying close to 30 cents a litre in carbon tax. So common sense Conservatives want to axe the tax. Hopefully we'll get our opportunity after the next election. But for now, we wanted to put a pause on any increases, Brian.
Yeah, and I wonder what the fallout will be then. I mean, if it's what the rebate checks will look like, if they keep pace or not. Because, does it argument? There's no way you're going to agree with this, but I mean, as I said to Melissa Lantzman, it just seemed to be the immediacy versus, the Trudeau's longer-term future of what it means for the climate. I mean, there's no disputing that. And I know you're not a climate change denier, but you just don't feel that the issue is as urgent as the Liberals. Is that fair enough?
Okay, so Canada is a natural resource producer nation that produce natural resources to supply manufacturing all over the world. So we're going to have a higher than average per capita carbon emissions. So let's look at Japan, for example. It has basically no natural resources. And we send a tremendous amount of natural resources, whether it's fish or whether it's steel, to China. Japan. And they came looking for natural gas because they wanted to reduce their dependency on Russian gas and on coal. And the Prime Minister simply said there was no economic model for that to make sense. And the same was said when the German Chancellor came looking for natural gas from Canada a couple of years ago. So, last year saw the highest amount of coal consumption in history in the world. This year is going to break another record. So natural gas cuts the emissions. If we had all the thermal generating plants that depend on coal worldwide, if we had them all converted to natural gas, we'd cut their emissions in half, and the overall emissions in the world would drop by close to 25%. And that's something that we can do a lot faster than supplying green energy or green hydrogen to the world. And I'm not against green hydrogen, but I'm just talking about the speed of implementation and the fastest impact that we could have in bringing down emissions, Brian.
Sure. No, absolutely, Clifford. And I do apologize. We're right up against the news. That's my fault for going down a road that's much longer than time we have. But I do appreciate the call. Thanks for absolutely chiming in, especially on the former Prime Minister Mulroney. I meant to get to that, so I appreciate that. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon.
Absolutely. Anytime, my friend. You have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Off the news with Brian Medore.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
And welcome back to the show. Off to line one, and the Deputy Mayor of the City of St. John, Sheila O'Leary, you are on the air.
Good morning, Brian. And listen, you've got an exciting show today. I'll tell you that's for sure.
We had lots of fodder from the last couple of days, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to discuss. Well, look, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for taking my call. I wanted to, first of all, send out our ongoing collective support and speedy healing to my colleague on council, Councillor Debbie Hanlon, who's battling cancer. Debbie is in all of our hearts and prayers, and we're certainly continuing to send her light as she fights this thing. So I just wanted to send that out to her.
Everything you just said and more.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I know all the discussion is on the provincial budget right now, and justifiably so, but I wanted to turn the lens to our upcoming federal budget because that's just around the corner.
Yeah, sure.
And
16th, is it, I think?
Yes, it is, exactly. And of course, you know what, this is with my municipality hat on. So I'm the FCM board representative with FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, who of course lobbies on behalf of municipalities right across the country. And individual municipalities right now, they differ from provincial and federal governments because we have to deliver a balanced budget. We can't go over. And, of course, in anticipation of the federal budget coming in April, of course, I wanted to bring this issue forward. The big issue is we're at a standstill right now in regards to our Canada Community Building Fund. This infrastructure funding that we get from the federal government has been essential to the well-being of our city. Of course, no news to anybody that, we've got historic growth and massive housing challenges going on. And we have a critical need to invest in infrastructure for new housing units. And of course, so we talk about housing, and we're going to continue to fund housing, and that's fantastic. And we just obviously came down with some great Housing Accelerator Fund initiative here at the City of St. John's. That's fantastic. So we're going to see a much more aggressive approach to densifying the city and, and supplying that or enabling those kind of housing units to be built. But if we don't have the infrastructure there to support the new housing units, such as water, wastewater, public transit, local roads, all that kind of stuff, then, of course, that's a moot point. So we really need to, and this is a voice that's right across the country right now, and we're going at, we're really going at after this conversation with our MPs about this particular fund. And, so we want the government to step up in the budget 2024 to solidify a commitment to this investment. Each new housing, just as an indication, estimates right across the country, each new housing unit is about $107,000 in infrastructure cost to even get the housing going. So you can't have one without the other. And this has been a really reliable source of funding that municipalities have counted on. And right now it's at a standstill. So we have to talk about it now before the budget goes out. We need to make sure there are some negotiations certainly ongoing right now, but we need a collective voice here from the municipalities who have to put forward a balanced budget to make sure that we can get the infrastructure, make sure that we can provide the infrastructure to our communities.
It's funny but in the aftermath of COVID, I remember asking the mayor, I think it was after this. It must have been the budget of 22, I think. But in any event, I remember asking him, wouldn't it be in a perfect world you didn't have to at least give you a pass on a balanced budget in order to get through what we were facing and all the unknowns in the fallout from COVID? But, we can see the reasons now. But that's not something you'd be in favor of. I mean, I know you're bemoaning the fact that you have to balance the budget, but...
Well, you know what? No, I mean, look, if that's the reality of it, I'm not saying that we should be otherwise or should go into debt and things like that. That's not what I'm suggesting. Right. I'm just saying that this is what we have. And so we know we have to have a balanced budget. So we have to be squeaky clean in terms of how this kind of, where the money comes in, how we can delegate that throughout the different myriad of different projects that are going to happen throughout the city. And of course, not just the City of St. John's. We're talking about every municipality right across the country. And this is a collective voice that is speaking to this uncertainty. And of course, it's called the Canada Community Building Fund, and that has been the only federal infrastructure program that municipalities have been able to rely upon. To rehabilitate existing infrastructure, right? And growth and to accommodate growth.
So just to be clear, are you wondering whether or not it's going to exist or what the level is, or?
That's right. It's at a standstill. We don't know what's happening with it, and there's no commitment right now.
And I'm just wondering, I mean, that's 3 weeks away from the federal budget. If it doesn't exist now, what are the odds that it will exist in 3 weeks? This is kind of beyond the level.
This is why I'm calling you, Brian. I want to make sure that people know, that people are well aware that this is a very big concern for municipalities. This is not just the deputy mayor of the City of St. John's. MNL is very, very involved in this initiative and this lobby action as well, too, in these conversations, as is FCM, the Federal Canadian federal Canadian municipalities. So, this is something that will impact municipalities right across the country. And if we are in this crunch right now where we know what's happening with the housing crisis and we want to get very aggressive about our bills, we have to. And the infrastructure, if we don't know what's happening with the infrastructure funding, then that's going to be very problematic.
Yeah, so, and beyond that, you just came back from the FCM meetings, I think back in the fall, was it? Or am I...
There were meetings just recently, and then we've got upcoming ones in Calgary as well, too, right? So there's ongoing meetings all the time. And, of course, we're also talking about the municipal growth framework.
That's what I was getting at.
It's archaic, right?
Yep. Okay. That's the framework. What I was going to say was the larger picture that we've been discussing before, beyond this, is the larger framework of how it's changing, how the landscape of what municipalities have to pay for and their share of it has changed dramatically. And I believe we had a conversation before about the need for a full overhaul.
Absolutely, and that certainly has been the focus. But now, we have this uncertainty in terms of our ongoing funding for infrastructure, and that's at a standstill. So now we can, not on top of the fact that we're continuing to lobby for a new municipal growth framework, we've got this uncertainty at a standstill now about municipalities and where they're going to get the funding for infrastructure, because this is it's all tied in together. You can't just separate them. But obviously the long-term plan here for sure. Well, it's not that long-term. It's right around the corner. Is that we do need to look at how we get funded as municipalities, because Brian, because I see you down at the meetings and things like that, that we're the boots on the ground. And this is where, a lot of the infrastructure certainly happens for people who are in community. And if we don't have the ability to do that, well, who's going to suffer, right?
And you're right. And I'm down there and I do see, on the housing issue, at least, that the applications are fast and furious. And I've seen some unique situations, but there's also, have you getting much pushback about the density issue? I mean, we know that we're asking people to understand the crisis, and we're talking micro units, we're talking four, what's the word for it?
Fourplexes.
Fourplexes. We're looking at those. We're talking about not being afraid of heights anymore. The 10-story building that's going to go up on Canals Hill.
It's new times, Brian. We have to start changing for the times. Look at the desperation that people have right now for housing needs. It's like we have to get on with it. And cities, the reality of cities are that they need to be dense in order to accommodate the population, to make sure that everybody has safe, affordable housing. And you know what? Somewhere along the line, this totally got out of whack, and the population growth is really, incredible right now. Here in our province, of course, we're seeing it more from newcomers.
Yep. Let alone the domestic need. Yeah.
Exactly. But the reality is we're deficient, and we have to get aggressive, and that means change. And change is hard for people. I understand that, but we have to start reshaping the way that we actually build our communities, and we are going to see changes. It's not all going to be single unit houses anymore. We are going to have to start building up, and that doesn't mean that we don't do it in a thoughtful way and an engaged way. But we are going to be more aggressive, and we are going to try to be way more efficient when we deal with development applications, and that's what this Housing Accelerator Fund certainly will help us do.
Sheila,
they've been very great about supporting us in that, with the federal government in that regard, so now let's see what's going to happen in regards to our infrastructure. Right?
Yeah, we'll be watching closely when the federal budget comes out. I'm sure we'll hear probably some indication before that. And if you do, by all means, drop us a line. But yeah, we'll be watching that close when it comes down. Sheila, thanks so much for the call. And once again, all the best to Councillor Hanlon.
Thank you so much, Brian. Take care.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, that's Deputy Mayor Sheila O'Leary, City of St. John's. Off to the break.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
And welcome back to the show. Off to line 3, and Lloyd Parrott, you're on the air.
Morning, Brian. How are you?
Good, sir. And you?
Always well. It's a great day to be around. I guess any day that we're on this side of the side is a good day.
Agreed.
I just wanted to call in and talk about a statement that the Premier made 2 days ago. He said he's profoundly upset that people could not get to work, and that the People's Legislature was closed, and the People's Budget could not be tabled. And I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the hypocrisy in that statement. Last Wednesday, we tabled a private member's resolution on the fishery, and at that time we indicated that there was a desire for us to have emergency debate on the fishery. Instead, they shut the legislation down, and it was the Premier that made that decision. And for him to come out this week and complain about protesters shutting down the legislation, which they didn't, obviously. If they had shut the legislature down, I guess the Liberals wouldn't have snuck in the middle of the night with their sleeping bags and stayed there in order to get a budget pushed through yesterday, which didn't need to happen. Interim supply is in place. We have an ability to move government forward, and the debate on the budget can happen in 3 weeks, or they could have rescheduled the House entirely with the 3-week break that's coming up. We don't generally see a 3-week break in the legislature, and it's really troubling to me, when a Premier is traveling all over the world, and for him to come back and make a comment such as that, it really shows how out of touch he is, and it's disappointing to say the least.
Lloyd, any of these, I think you would agree, any of these discussions now are just too late.
Yeah, absolutely. Should have happened. They had a year, and I'll give you an example. In my district, Brian, I have some fish plants that had applied for an extension on their cap. They have a million pound processing capability. Not capability. They can process far more than that. And this is just snow crab, but again, they want to process more, different species and whatnot. But a million pounds, and they actually gave up on their applications. And they gave up because they were told they had to file. They couldn't get an expansion. They had to file an application as if they were new to the market. And I tell you, if this is the approach that the government has, it shows you just how far out of touch they are. So Glovertown, Hickman's Harbour, Happy Adventure, 3 plants, and this isn't new. This isn't a request to happen in 2023 for 2024. This has been ongoing since 2019, and they've been beat up against the same wall every year. And it really shows how out of touch, like I said, the government is. You know, at the end of the day, if we can get more people in rural Newfoundland working, which I think, you know, would happen under the right circumstances, you know, these companies have to find a way to manage how they do things. But fishermen have a right to go catch their fish, you know, with the total allowable catch, and bring it in and have it processed. And if they can't find a place to take it, and there are alternatives, such as the ones I just noted, government should be stepping in. And a great example would be brought a new player into the market, I believe it was 3 years ago, in Dandy Dan, 3 million pound quota for processing. They haven't processed a pound. And, you know, in that 3-year period, they could have divvied that 3 million pounds out across other processors and said, you can do this up until this new plant comes online, and then you may lose it. But there's a way to do it, right? And we don't look for solutions. Instead, we're gone all over the world. And, you know, I had a fisherman come to me yesterday, and it was kind of funny. I mean, sarcasm, obviously, but he said, what do we got to do to get a meeting with this premier? Do we have to go to Dubai or Boston or Washington? You know, how does it work? And they're not wrong. You know, they're definitely not wrong. Certainly when the legislature is scheduled to sit. I understand the premier has to travel as part of his job, but to spend, I believe, to spend somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000 since 2021, and keep in mind that we've gone through a 70-day election, period of COVID and all that stuff, in that's the premier's spend on travel. It's really shameful when you think about it.
I think every government, every premier will find their spots, and they'll find, I mean, the business of government sometimes requires this. There was a time during COVID we thought, they'll never have to do it again because you can do it by Zoom. But we know that there are events they go to, and every government does it, and every premier does it. Whether or not it's at the height of, you know, economic strife in a province or a country is another question. But Lloyd, I just want to ask you, are you shadow for industry and technology? And
Industry, energy, technology.
Energy, technology.
Correct, yeah.
I just wanted to pick your brain a bit on, and you know, what your first reaction was to the agreement between Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, or the province, depending on who you ask, and Corner Brook Pulp and Paper on the sale of what they say green power, but they're, you know, the sale of power from the Deer Lake facility, which of course is owned by Corner Brook Pulp and Paper. What did you make of that, and you know, what's your assessment?
You know, legislatively, businesses have been handcuffed historically with their ability to put power back into the grid. We have a power shortage here in this province, regardless of what people say. And if you don't believe that, go no further than Labrador West and look what's happening with the mining operations up there and their inability to, you know, do things as simple as build houses unless there's a new power line that comes through. The other thing I would say is that it's kind of funny that my colleague, Minister Parsons, who's on a few minutes ago talking about Muskrat Falls and rate mitigation, I'd love for them to produce the rate mitigation deal, because to date nothing has been done. It's still not in place. And they talk about Muskrat Falls as a big thorn in our sides in one breath, and in the next breath they're saying it's our saving grace. So, you know, when they say that our green energy is the key to bringing future players, green steel, green processing for any of our minerals, any of our natural resources, Disney, all these other companies here, in one breath they tout it as if it's our future and our saving grace, which I truly believe it is. And then in the next breath they say that it's the worst thing we've ever done. They need to make up their mind what they're doing. And, you know, at the end of the day, when you take, just look at the South Coast of Labrador. You know, we talk about Muskrat Falls, and here we are putting another thermal generation plant in. So you either have the ability to be green or not. So I would say the utilization of the power from Corner Brook, if it helps the Corner Brook mill survive, it's a good thing. If it lowers our carbon footprint, it's a good thing. the costs and stuff associated with it. I haven't borrowed down into it because, to be honest, it's been a busy week between the fishery and the budget. But I think we need to look at alternatives, and this could be one of the alternatives that works for us.
Very good. Lloyd Paris, member for Terra Nova, PC member and Deputy Opposition Leader. Thanks for the call.
All right, take care.
Always pleasure. Thanks. All right, Fonts, quick break or next call? Going to Clifford? Clifford Morency, you are on the air.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Where are you calling from?
I call from the lower North Shore of Quebec. I just across from where the ferry comes from it's across from Blanc.
Yes, sir. Blanc, southern Labrador.
I'm on that same side. Yeah. Yeah, I won't leave you very long. I just phone tell on the air that I support the crab fishermen in Newfoundland. Yeah, for what they're trying to get. If I got to say, if they give out, they're going to be the same problem again next year. So, to my opinion, the government should look at these people. Yeah, I mean these boats, what they're fishing on, the captain on these boats got a lot of expense for their crew members for they ever put a crab pot in the water. But the government, the fisheries don't look at that problem, for these captains. Yeah. But I got to say that the fishermen in Newfoundland, they shouldn't give up. They've been screwed over since the first man ever put a codfish in a basket.
You won't get a lot of
years.
You won't get a lot of disagreement on that one there, Clifford. I'm just wondering, are you a crab fisherman yourself?
No, I'm retired. Yeah, I worked in fish plants for just about 40 summers. Yeah. So I knows a little bit about fishing, yeah, in that way, yeah. But here in Quebec, we're on too. I know a crab fisherman that is very close to me, and his crew members last year, when the season was over, his crew members had to look for another job. They never, I don't know where he worked at. I don't know for hours or unemployment or what he had or what it was, but they never had it. When the crab fishing was over there, they had to look for another job for getting to get their UI. Yeah. So that shouldn't be.
That's the tangible example right there, Clifford, of what we've been hearing. Like from last year, we heard the union talk a lot of times about people going bankrupt and losing their shirts and not being able to hire on crew and people leaving. But, it's happening. It's just, we need to know sometimes you need to hear the firsthand examples of it like that, like an actual firsthand, which is why we do go and seek out those interviews sometimes. Not easy sometimes to get people to talk about how their financials and their life has been upended because they can't go fishing. But it's necessary conversation to have for sure.
Yes, the government got to look at these problems.
Absolutely. Beyond the fish plants and beyond just the unions and the producers.
It's not only the crab fishermen. You got to look at the plant workers. Yeah.
Yeah, which is what I meant to say. Beyond the harvesters and the union.
I've been listening to Paddy Daly.
Yes.
And one crab fisherman said where he lived to. Last year, when they started going for crabs, that in that place they lost about 3 million pound of crabs because the plant couldn't hold it. They was blocked.
And that's the capacity issue that just one of the three prongs you'd be calling, I guess.
Yes, yes. Yeah, but that's where that guy was out. Yeah. I mean, he told Patty that there were 10 boats every day tied up to the wharf. I couldn't get their crabs out of the boat. The plant was blocked. Yeah.
Clifford, I appreciate the call. I got to get up to the news.
Okay, yes, bye. That's all I got to say about my friend. Yeah.
Thanks for calling in. Don't be a stranger.
And I thank you for taking my phone call. Yeah.
You're welcome anytime. All right, Fonz, let's take it off to the news at Brian Medore.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program, the home stretch for the day and the week. Let's go right away to line one and welcome Jeff Loader, Association of Seafood Producers Executive Director. How are you, Jeff?
Not too bad. Brian, how are you?
Good, sir. I guess right off the top, I just want to ask you, so we know that the FFAW and the Fisheries Minister, they're meeting, or they have been this morning. They got a meeting, and in exchange, of course, the protesters were asked to stand down and kind of hang out in the overflow parking lot, sort of pending that. So they're in a kind of a holding pattern. But, I saw some of your response yesterday, but just give me an overview. What's your whole, sitting back and watching all of this week?
So I'd like to start by just talking about capacity in the province. Last year, in a condensed season, plants processed in excess of 10 million pounds per week in 8 of the 14 weeks of the season. And that's without a couple of plants that will be operating this year who were not in the crab business last year. In a normal season, there are only 1 to 2 weeks of production exceeding 10 million pounds. So this entire notion that there's not enough capacity in this province is not supported by the facts. And one of the biggest concerns processors have is, protecting the right of plant workers to get their hours to satisfy the new higher EI requirements, which are gone up from 420 to 490. And I think that's all been lost in this conversation, and we're quite surprised that FFAW is taking the position that, increasing capacity in this province will not have an impact on, existing plant workers. That is not factually accurate in any way. Even if the quota goes up, the question becomes what happens in 3 or 4 years when the normal cycle of the crab, the quota goes down. There will be, a situation where you'll have more licenses fighting over a reduced supply. So that's the first issue. The second issue is this issue around sort of where we're to from new licenses. If the province is going to issue new licenses or allow outside buyers, we think there needs to be a real fulsome review of exactly what that would mean for the province. We've been trying now for 14 months to work out a formula with the FFAW. And of that 14 months, we've been in real discussions for probably 6 or 7 months. And it's clear to ASP and our members that at this time the union does not seem ready to really adopt a sort of price-to-market formula where you actually have risk shared and other factors. And the last point is the question of risk and the rights of harvesters. Harvesters have a right to fish. Nobody is questioning that. But processors have a right to, schedule supply. Any business operating has the right to schedule when their product that they are going to sell is delivered. So this entire notion of, a free market that they're asking for is not really a free market. If it was a free market, harvesters from anywhere in Canada could come down to Newfoundland and catch crab. And any processor could process, across the country. We don't have that system. It is a public good in this province, and we have regulation. And it is important that everybody understands that, there are implications if there is additional capacity. We're going to wait and see the outcome of the meeting today, as well as the outcome of the quota decision by the federal government, and then we'll have more to say about that. But I think it's important everyone in the province understand that there are risks to plant workers here. We've had some callers today address that. We're hearing a lot from our employees. We're the largest private sector employer in the province. And I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, there are implications. And just my last point, very high level, is this is 2 years in a row I've been involved in the fishery directly. And both years, there were efforts very close to when the price was being set to address other issues. Last year, it was an increase in quota that certain segments of the union wanted. This year, it's now the issue of corporate concentration and additional capacity. They're issues that ASP are willing to discuss at any time. And we set down a path this year as three parties, the province, the union, and ASP, to work out a reasonable formula that shares the value. And the raw material price that harvesters receive in Newfoundland is higher than anywhere else. Last year, it was well over 50%, close to 60%. And, so I think it's time, there's still time before a price-setting panel next week. We are open to continuing discussions. And there has been some reporting that, the negotiations have ended. Negotiations have stalled, but that doesn't mean they can't be rejuvenated and we can't get back to the table and work through some of these issues. And I understand there's a lot of frustration, and that primarily comes from the fact that we had record high prices that are now right back to where they were about 20 years ago. So there's some complicated issues here, and I just wanted to make sure that the narrative is not that processors are somehow out to get harvesters or anything like that. They're businesses that invest a lot of money, and they want the opportunity to invest more money, create more employment. So we're not having an industry centered around people qualifying for EI, for example. So there's another side to this, and I look forward to continuing to have conversations with the union as the days unfold. Right now, we're set to go to a panel next Thursday, and if we have to, we will. But there's still a lot of time between now and then.
Wow, so much to talk about in so little time. Jeff, let me just ask you this. You mentioned 14 months now, and that predates even last year's tie-up and dispute at the formula. And you say the union's not ready. Let me ask you this first. Just what is your definition of free enterprise?
Well, my definition of free enterprise would be that both sides, we have an open system. So there's no set amount of harvesters, no set amount of processors. It's like you would have in any type of free market sort of system. What we have in Newfoundland, though, is because it is a public good, we have a level of regulation. And, for example, the issue of outside buyers. I mean, that's a peculiar position for anyone to advance in Newfoundland, from my perspective, because the core policy of Newfoundland and Labrador for almost 25, 30 years has been, let's create as much employment as we can in the province. So, it's both sides need to coordinate, work together to create as much value and share that value. That's the initiative we've been trying, or the point we've been trying to get to now since last February. And we're going to continue to work because that is where we need to get to. If we don't, we will have the same situation every year. And nobody wants that. Certainly ASP and its members do not want that. The type of activity, behavior that happened this week is really unfortunate. It sends a very terrible signal to the market. We have to deal with that market. And ultimately, the market will determine the value that comes back to Newfoundland. And we have tried literally now for over 6 or 7 months to come up with a proper, risk-based formula. Formulas, as discussed in the strategic review report, independent done by the province, which the union and ASP supported. Identify these factors. I mean, they can't simply be ignored. You can't just say we're going to pay $4 a pound and, ignore the fact that prices can fluctuate from $2.50 to $5.
Yeah.
But you can't do that. So there are difficult conversations, and the union has some legitimate concerns. Both parties are hurting from those years where we had these enormous increases in crab prices. So we're all trying to adjust to that. And we're open to having, as we have been, a really good conversation around that. But it can't be a conversation where there's an expectation that a price is way above what the market can pay. And the price has been set in Atlantic Canada at $2.50, and that's an opening price. It may increase as the year goes on. So, you can't expect the price of $3.50, $4 here to start a season when we have no assurances the market will provide that return back. But a formula, in the event that actually happens in the market, that's what we need.
Going back, it was 220 last year. Do you, real quick, as brief an answer as you can give me, is there too much corporate concentration in the industry in the province?
Absolutely not. There's been several studies that have demonstrated that. And I'm happy to come back on next week and get into the details on that. Very hard for me to give a short answer, but I'll stop.
I know, I had to ask. And the last thing, yesterday's news conference, was that just cancelled because of everything that was going on and you decided to just issue a news release, or did something else happen that changed your strategy?
No, we were just wanted to see how it unfolded so we could properly address what was coming out of that process. And to be very frank, we didn't want to add any extra, heat to this issue at the moment because things were getting out of hand, and we don't support that type of behavior. It is 2024, and there are certain expectations around behavior, and I certainly wasn't going to do anything to condone that.
Jeff Loader, Executive Director of the Association of Seafood Producers. I really appreciate the call. Thanks a lot, and we'll look forward to seeing what comes out of the meeting between the FFAW and the Minister. Thanks again. Have a great weekend.
You too, sir. Thanks.
Thanks. Jeff Loader with ASP, Association of Seafood Producers. Off to the break. When we come back, the NLTA President, Trent Langdon.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
And welcome back to the home stretch of the show, right to line number 2. And the president of the Newfoundland Labrador Teachers Association, Trent Langdon, you are on the air.
Hey, good morning, Brian. How are you?
Good, sir. Almost to the to that hour, so it's been an 100%. Early rise.
Yep.
Looking through and I'll, lots to cover here, I'm sure, but I'll let you go first. What's the first thing off the top of your mind you called about?
Yeah, so obviously part of my job is speaking to education. We have a responsibility as teachers and teacher association to speak to the pressures that are in the system. We obviously care about our members, but also the children and what the system is looking like. It's this budget yesterday is very worrisome for us from the perspective that the government is very well aware as to what's going on the ground in our schools. There's been plenty of opportunity. A few weeks back, you might have heard of a think tank that was held for teachers. More than 2,200 teachers provided survey responses, which is quite high. Over a third of our membership responded to the survey. There was a full day of discussion virtually. Teachers gave their lived experience, very heartfelt, very heart-wrenching in many ways of how they've been injured on the job, and it's just too difficult to get the work done. Premier was there for an hour, as well as the Minister of Education for the majority of the day. So it's very well known what's going on. And then we go to the budget yesterday at the Federation of Labour, or we watched the budget, I should say, and I see the document, and I go through the highlights at the start of the document, and there's zero reference to education. So I knew we were setting ourselves up for an interesting couple of days.
Yeah, and I mean, not maybe off the top, of course, I'm looking down through the money that's being spent. We have no time to go through all of it, but I see almost $1 million there for retention and recruitment initiatives in quote-unquote hard-to-fill rural, remote, and isolated areas of the province. Not enough?
Well,
or too late, too coming?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't recall, I heard a previous speaker you had on this morning talk about that if you start digging into, it might have been yourself, start digging into the weeds, and I think it was you, you start digging into the weeds of truly these announcements, and that much of the money has already been announced, for example, or the money, the biggest issue for us is, well, twofold. One is that many of the monies announced have already been announced, but number two, they're to address new services and new things that are added to the system. For example, expansion of the busing radius and newcomers, populations increasing. None of it is addressing the current issues that we have in the system. So recruitment, retention, great. These hard-to-fill positions in isolated and rural northern areas, great. But there needs to be something done to retain. It's very piecemeal. It's very ad hoc. It's very responsive versus preventative. And so that's that pretty much sums up our concerns around that. The fact that at a very small piece of the puzzle, but within that there's nuances.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about student assistant, of course, hours, and there's money there for that as well. Is that new? I mean, I honestly had to ask you about some of these things. I'm glad you're here because you would know better than I would, and it's hard to find out.
Well, yeah, for sure. So the student assistant time, what we could garner from, since, again, we've only had it in our hands since yesterday, is that some of these full-time units, again, some of it is related to already announced, but some of it's related to, again, the expansion of busing, right, and that certain students require busing supports. And so, again, it's services that are up and above the current issues. No doubt some of it will make its way into the current system, but when we have 250 schools in the province, 250 plus, adding a few additional student assistants to the need is. I've often heard schools and school principals make their appeals to government for additional time, and they. If you truly look at the numbers, they need 3 or 4 each sometimes to really address the needs in their building versus having 15 to 20 to spread out across 250 schools. So at first glance, it sounds like, okay, yeah, some investment, and it is, but as I said this morning on with Jerry Lynn on the morning show, it's in terms of public policy, education needs to be at the foundation of any decision making, and that needs to be there. It needs to be priority, along with obviously any social supports that people need, healthcare and so on. But many times it seems education is the poor cousin, often overlooked, and that's the worrisome piece.
Very similar frame of from John Harris earlier with Munsu.
Okay.
I didn't want to not I see the 1.6 kilometer policy is being eliminated. It's going to cost them $20 million to do it. Mm-hmm. As someone who's covered House of Assembly for many years, thank God for that. I'm sorry. I know it's an important issue to parents and families. That's not the part. It's the back and forth and the over and over. And are they going to, aren't they going to? Yep. And it's gone. Big significant to you?
100%. I, as a parent myself, and knowing and having worked in the system and going back to a system as a guidance counselor in the next couple of years, I know full well there's a lot of families who need that so much, and you'll never hear us say that we don't agree with that. And especially living in a province like this, my God, in the North Atlantic, you need busing to get children safely to school. So we 100% support that. But once again, that problem has been addressed, but announcements around student assistant time increase are related to those additional announcements. The problem we have right now, Brian, in our school system is we have a significant shortage of teachers on the ground, substitute teachers. If it wasn't for retired teachers coming back and working around this province, schools wouldn't be open. And even during COVID, it was said schools were the last to close, first to open, because we know how important schools are to the economy. And because if children aren't in school, obviously for educational reasons, obviously parents can't work either as well, because it's impossible. So, we know that. But at the same time, if that is going to be the case, if it's such an important piece of the economy, how come it's often an afterthought? And we hear about an education accord that's coming down the pipes. The education accord was announced a few weeks back. Much similar to the health accord. I'm concerned, very concerned, that this is not going to be done in a timely fashion, even though we've been promised it to be done by the end of this this calendar year. But again, will it just be simply tops of the trees recommendations that really have no power? And there needs to be a strategic plan set in place that is going to prioritize education, and it's going to address some of the major issues. We have violence that is going through the roof in our schools. We have mental health supports that are lacking immensely. You've covered a lot of news in your time. So any issue that's going on in society, whether it's related to crime or socioeconomic issues, they find themselves their ways into schools. And just in recent weeks, my God, the crime levels that we are experiencing, you can't tell me that there's not families impacted by that. And who do you think are trying to address and support those children?
Absolutely.
It's teachers, right? So that's where it is.
And Trent, very last, I heard Jerry Earl yesterday sort of give a grade on the budget. He gave a B+. Kind of surprised me. What do you give it?
I gave it a B+, did I?
No, Jerry Earl yesterday with Nape gave it a B+. I'm just wondering yours.
Mine's an F, 100% F. People who know me, I don't think we've met, Brian, but know that I'm a very positive person, very optimistic when it counts and when it's necessary. But I don't see anything in this that is of value. I am charged with with talking about the education system. I support harvesters, I support healthcare, I support all of those things. But this is my job, and but I think every Newfoundlander and Labradorian has to realize, and this needs to be education needs to be a public or a political issue.
Sure.
And when the election comes down the pipes, we hope education's on the front lines.
Thank you very much. Trent Lang, you've had the last word for the day and the week. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the information. We'll be talking soon.
Appreciate it, Brian. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And that is it for Open Line for the week. Patty will be back. All you emailers wondering, Patty will be back on Monday. Thank God they all say. Drive safely. Arrive live. VOCM cares.